Hi, I'm Satine Phoenix.
And I'm Jamison Stone, CEO of Apotheosis Studios.
So you guys are here to talk about a new D&D campaign that takes place in a really cool universe featuring one of the most underrated classes in D&D, the Bard.
Like,
yeah. Let's talk about this. So how did this idea come about? You guys are no stranger. You've done this before, but talk about how this idea came to light.
Yeah, so I've been running the live stream Sirens of the Realms on D&D's Twitch for about 4 years. And recently I took it from them and I was like, because it was like a co-thing that we did. And I'm like, you know what? I want it on my Twitch and I want to run with it. And because I'm only allowed to do Forgotten Realms stuff with them, but now it's like, oh, we can play this Sirens world anywhere. And so when Jamison and I got together, we're like, let's be super creative. I met him during his Kickstarter and yeah, he's really good at that game. And so we just create all the time. And then he was like, well, we're doing another book, so let's do Sirens.
Yeah, it was really funny. I love the Bard class, and before I met Satine, I really wanted to do a Bard book set in a Bard run city. And once Satine and I got together, I was like, baby, we can do this. We can do it. It'll be fantastic. It will be a tremendous amount of work, but it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
And the end product will be something really rad that not only we'll love to play, but everyone else will too.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that process, because I mean, I guess back in the day, like during 4th edition or 3rd edition, they were called modules, I guess is what they used to be called. But now you can just make your own book. Like, where do you even start? Like, who do you reach out to? What's this process?
It's pretty wild at this point. So, I really love 5th edition, and I love how Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards of the Coast have opened it up with OGL. And so it allows independent, game creators like us, like Apotheosis Studios and so many others, to use this common language and metaphysics and game rules to be able to tell really epic stories in a language that people understand, already have familiarity with, but also just a really solid rule set. And so before you'd kind of have these, as you mentioned, these modules that would come out. But really, I think that fans now, they really want a kind of a one-stop shop, a total package where they have not only a campaign, but an entire setting too. And some people will still just do like little one-off adventures or, little side quests or a village. But how we run our games, it's an entire city. And the city will have, little fiefdoms as well. So for our last book, The Red Opera, the Shadelands, it's an entire map that we've created. And Sirens Battle of the Bards is no different. So our city of Selvata is its own total ecosystem, and it allows our players to really have free reign within this city.
Yeah, and in the book, you've got your adventure. So a module would be an adventure. You don't even have to put any rule set in it because you should have already read the game, the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Player's Handbook. So what we're doing is we've got setting information. We have mechanics on like how to be more cooperative with your game, how to create a band, even if you're not a bard, how to do triple advantage, which is a house rule that I do for my shows. And so you have all that. And then you have side quests, additional things, and new monsters. So you're creating monsters, locations, magic items, NPCs. You're really creating not just like the setting and the place, but you're populating it with people and other monsters and new things.
Yeah, fully fledged NPCs. All of the main characters are all statted out and all there. And we really dive in. We even for the Red Opera have recipes, and for Sirens Battle of the Bards, we have specialized districts of different item sellers that you can go to. A whole new line of tinctures and potions and tonics, and really everything that you would need to run a campaign. And you could have either a new adventure or a pre-existing campaign that you could really like an entire year of gaming. We have 20 adventures, 10 core adventures and 10 side quests. Like you spend a lot of time at your table in one of our locations.
I feel like a lot of people get caught up in art and like the visualization, but I feel like writing is the most raw form of creativity, because that's where everyone starts. Before you can draw a picture, you have to describe it, right? So can you talk about some of the challenges when you're creating these worlds and stuff, because obviously art's expensive and sometimes it has to be licensed, so you just have to have words. What are some of the challenges of creating these new races and enemies and cities just in words?
Totally.
It's actually really interesting. So There's both of us, and then we have a writing director and an art director. So the writing director is Rick Heinz, and David Granjo is our art director. So we are the creative directors, and we work with the two of them. So we are all bards in our own right, and we're creating together. So we have this idea and Sirens, which is a pre-existing IP that has elements we want to bring into it, but we actually create it together. And because we are of different mediums, I'm a comic book artist and an author, a nonfiction author, and he's a fantasy sci-fi author.
Yep. And graphic novelist as well.
Graphic novelist. And then being able to approach it from so many different angles, we're able to create from like multiple layers. Yeah. So maybe the writers will start speaking a certain language and the artists will start speaking a certain language, and then we describe what we actually mean to each other. Whereas I might not be able to describe it verbally sometimes, but I could sketch it out. And then by me showing that to everyone, they can start adding to that. And so we're actually our own adventuring party.
Yeah, our own bard party as we co-create it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, it's really interesting to take when you have working on a collaborative project with a bunch of published authors, which we all are, and having to then weave it into a common narrative so everything really flows can be a real challenge. And so I think it really takes a lot of sagacious effort from Satine, myself, and then Rick, and then David, to be able to kind of have each other's kind of our primary focuses, but then learn how to speak a common language as we move forward. So when the reader actually picks up the book, it doesn't feel like you have, 4 directors and then an additional 10 writers behind that, which is one cohesive narrative through and through. And that's just the words. Then you have to have a cohesive visual narrative through and through as well.
So we have about 10 to 12 core writers on top of the 4 of us. So we're like the executive team. Then we have a series of writers. And then we also have different artists, graphic designers, layout artists, 3D illustrators. We have a lot of people we work with there. And it's this constant cycle of creativity where we're making stuff, we're checking in on each other, we're giving notes, and then the 2 of us try to make them all seamless and work together.
Yeah.
Now, as accomplished novelist and drawing visual artists, is one more harder than the other, or do they both have their own unique set of challenges?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say
yes,
for me,
I
would say for me, just writing is it's kind of like my natural like primary class, and so obviously words come much more naturally. And so someone like David Gredge, or our art director, obviously, he thinks more visually than I would, and Satine kind of being a hybrid and more of a visual artist. I think that probably
and he and I think so similarly, and we create similarly. We even our graphic novels, like they're a lot of similarities. So between the 2 of us working together like this, we're able to kind of catch everybody and work with everyone and even translate for each other. So maybe he's like, I don't understand what David's really means here. And I'm like, I know what he means. And then I can speak our language and then create from that.
It's kind of like a Wonder Twins power activate type of thing.
Totally.
I totally see it.
Yeah.
So when you're making a book that's full of stories and adventures and a cohesive world, I have to ask, how do you account for that guy in the D&D party playing the group? The guy who tries to kill everything or tries to go off cancer, like how do you, is that something you think about when you're in
the murder hobo?
Like
yeah. In this world, there's arcane wards that protect the place. So have you ever been to Disneyland? Yeah, it's like, you can't break into Disneyland. That's hard. That would be really complicated. So like, what do? We have guards, we have undercover guards, we have, you can't even fly into the place. The only access to go up and down is through the center well we have, the Great Siphon.
Yep.
And, but we make that a good experience. So there's consequences to everything. We make sure we write consequences. How would a city that is all high charisma characters try to defend itself? They're not going to have cannons pointing at people, but maybe they have like CCTV balls running around, making sure that everything is recorded.
Yeah, and particularly for kind of a Bard campaign, and how we have it, your fame and your renown within the city is very important. And so if you were just to go wantonly killing people, maybe the antagonists of the city might start to like you a little bit more, and so you could potentially then run the campaign more aligned with them. But then all the other NPCs, they are going to have a much more negative affect towards you, and that will really drastically affect actually how the campaigns run. And we, almost like a video game, track that, and we have tables for it for the GM to be able to know exactly who you're pulling more favor with, and that then plays into our multiple endings for the campaign as well.
Yeah, because what is good and evil, really, right? So in here, it's like just which way do you go? But always we dial in the complications and consequences of every single action.
The Jedi are evil.
Right. The antagonist is mad because he has a charisma of 0. That's why he hates everyone in the city. So can you guys paint a picture of this city? Because I've been to cities that have run by obviously wizards and mages or druids or even vampires, but a whole bard city is something I've never experienced in my 20 years of playing D&D.
Absolutely.
Please, Ryder.
Yeah, absolutely. So we really wanted to lean into it, having the city be a work of art in and of itself. And so it's built on this oasis in the middle of a desert. And originally some druids actually found this oasis, and they just kind of thanked the gods for giving them water in this place. And they performed this ritual, and the gods came down and they blessed this oasis with this magical quality that's called Kesava, and allowed them to be just more powerful in whatever actions that they were performing. Eventually enough people came, and this became kind of a place of pilgrimage, that they started to build almost like a Burning Man style town around this area, and they'd flock to it. And then every 100 years, the gods would come back and they would kind of reinvigorate it. Eventually, an entire city kind of burst forth from this, and they started making discs over this initial well source to be able to hopefully coax the gods down to continue to instill their magical quality into the city. Well, anytime that you have such amazing, creative types that cast, very bright creative lights, you have deep shadows as well. And so some negative aspects came to the city as well. And eventually you have kind of warring factions trying to actually gain control of this Kesava quality. On top of that, the gods didn't actually always, they weren't impressed with the grand invocation that the bards and the druids historically had been doing. And so the bards saying, hey, we're kind of the charismatic group here. Let us put on this performance for the gods to really encourage them to bless us every 100 years. And so our story takes place at the kind of capping stone of this after 1,000 years. And the gods have said, okay, listen, folks, we're kind of done playing this game. We're going to give you one more shot, and we'll give you one last big charge, and then we're out. We're going to go do whatever other things we're doing on other planes of existence. And so Calrath, he's the Grand Chancellor, he said, okay, this is the last one we get. We really got to make it count. And he's created this system of a capping stone that allows this cycle to actually recharge itself. Unfortunately, the Emerald Cabal, and that's the antagonist group from Sirens and Sirens of the Realms before that, that people know from Satine's web series and online streaming show, they have been using Kesava to actually fuel this elixir of the gods that allows people to live longer, and have started to infiltrate the city to try and control it. And instead of bringing down gods, bringing down something a little bit different. And so the party is kind of thrust into the situation in which they have to decide, who are they going to side with? What are they going to do? Do they want to go with Calrath? Do they want to go with the Revolution, the Emerald Cabal, or do they want to do something completely on their own?
Yeah, that's incredible. You did a perfect job at painting a picture, by the way. Absolutely.
He's really good at that.
I mean, that's
like
the great
professionally
thing.
good.
The thing about D&D, right, is it's unlike a video game where there are a set core of rules. We obviously have that in D&D too, but like there's a ton of more leeway to like, oh, you want to go down this way? Well, you can do that. You know what I mean? And then, you can do all this stuff because you have a map of the city. You can go anywhere at any given time, where a game might be more handholdy. You might say, yeah, you can't go here yet. It's an invisible wall. You have to go over here first.
We don't want to punish those players for being creative and wanting to explore something. There is no right answer. So we want to make sure we have opportunities for them to go in different directions.
Player agency. I mean, again, I'm a huge video gamer. I love video games, but it is so frustrating when I can't do something. And again, as you mentioned, there's that wall. It's like, well, I literally could jump over that. Like, why can't I do that. But in D&D and TTRPGs in general, you can do literally anything within the rule set, and so it's fantastic within this setting to really lean into that player agency, and we have multiple forking paths of how you can have different endings. And we did the exact same thing with the Red Opera, and that's our Warlock campaign and setting book, where we have 4 major kind of final endings, but we have those even branch out further. So depending on how a party chooses, the city either can be grounded dust, can be brought one way with different patrons, and do a whole different ending. And the same is going to be happening with Salvata in Sirens Battle of the Bards. And I'm so excited. It's been so much fun with our previous books to be able to see the really creative kind of end games that the parties themselves think up, and then they communicate with us in their Discord, and they're like, this is what our party did. We're like, oh my gosh, you guys are so creative. Like, that's so cool.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Obviously, it sounds like you guys are already work remote. Did the COVID stay-at-home orders affect the book's design at all, or the process, or were you guys already ahead of the game?
We were so lucky. We were so lucky at Apotheosis Studios. So we're just kind of a completely we're all nuts, man. So we've been working on Discord this whole time for the past, probably 4 or 5 years. And so when COVID hit, other than, kind of people's psyches being like, oh my gosh, what's going on? As far as our workflow is concerned, it was no different at all. We all work out of home offices. We leverage Discord and email. And so for us, we did not miss a day. Now, a lot of our other professional partners, they were kind of reeling. And I remember telling my team, I was like, guys, like, although we don't know kind of what the landscape will look like, at least our work has not changed. And as far as TTRPGs are concerned, although I prefer to play in person, that's a lot more fun. People now can play online, play in VTTs and do in Zoom calls too. So we've seen a large way for people to connect virtually through TTRPGs, which has been fantastic.